Hi, a very good evening to all of you. I'm Karthik from the Hindu Youth Network Singapore. Last week we started off this Hindu Insider series, live discussion series, and we covered about Vedic astrology. Many of you asked lots of good questions on the relevance and validity of Vedic astrology. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Vedic yoga. In today's context, we hear so many buzzwords, right? Aerial yoga, hot yoga, hatha yoga, so many words, and we don't know how legit are all these terms and what is really yoga all about. Or for the matter, what is Vedic yoga all about? And to obviously answer my questions, we have a certified Vedic yoga instructor from the Hindu Center, Miss Malar. Please put my hands together and welcome Miss Malar. Hi Malar, how are you?
Namaste Karthik. Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hope circuit breaker is doing you well. Everything's well with you. All right. So let's begin today's session with opening prayer.
Yeah. So the prayer I'm going to chant is a prayer to Lord Shiva, the Adi Yogi, and it's a prayer from the yogic text called Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Om Shri Adinathaya Namostu Tasmai Yenopadishta Hatha Yoga Vidya Vibhrajate Pronataraja Yogam Arodhumichora Dhirohiniva.
That's a very beautiful prayer. Would you mind sharing with us the significance of this opening prayer?
Okay, so basically it's a prayer to offer my salutations onto the Adi Yogi. Adi usually means the very first yogi, Lord Shiva. And he is the one who has blessed us with the knowledge of Hatha Yoga Vidya, the knowledge of Hatha Yoga, which is like the steps to the final goal, the pinnacle of Raja Yoga, which is enlightenment.
Wow, it's very, very beautiful verse then. All right, Malar, I'm going to ask you lots of questions, lots of inquisitive questions, and some of them could be quite simple for you, and I hope some of them are also quite challenging. So let's begin. In today's context, we hear so many types of yoga available, hot yoga, and I just wonder what's the original Vedic yoga all about? Or are all these just branches of Vedic yoga? Mind enlightening us how legit are all these terms?
Okay, so before we go into the modern types of yoga, let's take a little bit of a journey into what is actually traditional yoga as per the scriptures. Okay? So the term Vedic yoga is relatively recent innovation. It's not found in the scriptures itself, the combination of the words Vedic yoga. So a recent term that's coined to remind us, or to rather connect us back to the Vedic roots of yoga. So the roots of yoga lie in our scriptures, our authoritative scriptures called the Vedas. And the original intention of Vedic yoga, as I might call it, the original intention is it is an approach or a method for self-realization. When I say self-realization, it means abiding in my highest self, which is pure consciousness, which we may call God. So people call it by different names. In Sanskrit, we refer to it as moksha. Sage Patanjali calls it kaivalya. In English, we call it self-realization, God realization, enlightenment. It goes by several names, So that is the original intention of yoga. Shades of it are mentioned, or rather the seed of yoga is mentioned in starting with the Vedas themselves, especially in the Upanishads.
Upanishads. What exactly is Upanishad? Just in case if our audience are not familiar with that term Upanishad. Yeah.
Okay. So the Vedas, they have four main components, and the Vedas were our primary scriptures, which the author is known to, the author is God himself. It was revealed to our sages several thousand years ago. The oldest Veda is the Rig Veda, and the estimated timeline, scholars give it a dating of anything from 3000 to about 1900 BCE. And so that's the earliest Veda, and the Veda has 4 components. We've got the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads, so the first part of the Vedas talks mainly about, it reveals mantras, rituals, okay, and for various goals that we have in life. And the second half of the Vedas, the Aranyakas and the Upanishads, they go into meditative practices, a lot of meditative practices, and the philosophy that's to give us knowledge on what exactly, knowledge on myself, knowledge on God, and what is my relationship with God, and the knowledge that is directly pertaining to realization, self-realization. And that philosophy, what we call Vedanta, is in the Upanishads itself. So the Upanishads, they talk about self-realization. What are the practices and the knowledge required for that? And when I say practices, it's only meditative practices, meditative techniques, okay? So the knowledge started, Vedic knowledge, yogic knowledge has started already in being revealed in the Vedas itself. And then here I'm going into a bit of the history of the development of yoga.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, it sets the context, right? So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so so to add on one more point about the Vedic origins of yoga, so along with the knowledge that's in the scriptures, we also have archaeological evidence to support that yoga was already in existence at that time, okay, or even before that. We do not know exactly when, but it was already a long-standing tradition. And we have the Indus Valley civilization. There have been archaeological finds. They found during their digs various seals. And the most famous seal is the Pashupati seal, which shows what most scholars refer to as an early form of Lord Shiva. And he's sitting in a meditative pose surrounded by various animals. So they're found in these archaeological digs in the Mohenjo-daro, the Harappan civilizations. They found digs, seals, which have got various forms of yogis, okay, yogic asanas or postures, mainly in meditative postures. Now, so from the Vedas, what happened was the next phase of scriptural occurrence that happened was what we call the Puranic phase. Okay, that started sometime around 1000 BCE. And from that period onwards, we have the itihasas, the scriptures called itihasas. So we've got Ramayana, Mahabharata, we've got the various Puranas being written. They're not God revealed at this point. They're what we call smritis. They are human authored scriptures based on the knowledge of the Vedas. They are not independent of the Vedas. They hold the Vedas as authority. Okay, and in these scriptures itself, especially the Mahabharata, in the Bhagavad Gita, which occurs in Mahabharata, Lord Krishna starts talking about yoga there. He goes into prana, right? Prana, meditation, what is dhyana? He even talks about the kind of food that the yogi should be taking. And from the Mahabharata, that period, we also have the rise of the prevalence, rather, of yogic philosophy, the yogic school of philosophy, yoga darshan as we call it. So 6 schools of philosophy started evolving and taking precedence in that period. And one of that schools of philosophy is called the yoga darshana. And it's during this period, okay, that we have a great sage by the name of Patanjali. What he did was to compile the already existing yogic knowledge, practices, the yogic philosophy into a scripture called the Yoga Sutras. That's what we commonly call it, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Okay, so he did not invent this knowledge. What he did was to compile what is already in existence. Okay, and this knowledge that he compiled, we refer to it commonly now as classical yoga.
Classical yoga, right.
And then based on his Yoga Sutras, subsequently there were a couple of commentaries, bhashyas as we call them. Teachers came along and they elaborated on the aphorisms in the Yoga Sutras. And what happened, interestingly, around, so this is the dating of Patanjali Yoga Sutra is, scholars pin it to around 500 BCE to about
Wow.
2nd CE. Yeah, so that's the estimated dating of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. We have a very ancient, beautiful tradition. It's
That's
really,
right, that's right. It's amazing, and to see how it's being cascaded down. And it's still living today in many parts of the world, and it's amazing, isn't it?
yes, absolutely. So the next big scriptural revelation that happened was around the 500 CE. We
Mm-hmm.
have the famous tantras, agamas being revealed at this time. The site of revelation happened around the Ganga region. The initial Vedic revelations happened in the Saraswati River area. And
Mm-hmm.
then the river dried up and the civilization moved to eastwards towards the Ganga area. And that's
Right.
where the next set of revelations happened. We call the tantras and the agamas. Tantras mainly pertaining to Shakti worship and practices, and agamas, Shiva agamas, Vishnu agamas. Okay. In this agamas and the tantras, we have the development of yogic knowledge, especially chakras. It talks about chakras, prana, elaboration of prana, nadi,
Mm-hmm.
and kundalini shakti, and all these start. They're developed a lot in these scriptures. Okay, and this is where we have yogic traditions, very old yogic traditions arising with these second revelation of the tantras and agamas. We're talking about very ancient traditions, the Kashmir Shaivism, Aghoris, the Lingayat, Nayanmars, Alvars. These are all yogic traditions that started happening with this
Okay.
tantric and agamic development. And then what happened was around the 800 CE, around that time, we've got another tradition that starts developing what we call the Siddha tradition. Now, the Siddhas, they had the Siddha tradition developing in the north, and they're called the Natha Sampradaya. And in the south, they were called the Maheshwara Sampradaya. In the south, the Maheshwara Sampradayas, we had great teachers starting to write, and the scriptures were being shared and being taught. So great sages like Agastya and Bhogar and Turumula. Okay, so that was in the
Mm-hmm.
south. In the north, in the North Natha Sampradaya, we had that's where Hatha Yoga started developing, the tradition of Hatha Yoga. And it started with the teachers, famous teachers, we might say maybe the first prominent teachers. The founder is taken as Lord Shiva itself. But
Mm-hmm.
first prominent teachers are Gorakshanatha and his guru Matsendranatha. And with Gorakshanatha, his disciple called Swami Swatma Rama, he wrote the defining Hatha Yoga scripture, the first defining Hatha Yoga scripture called the Hatha Yoga Pradipika.
Okay.
It's used until today. And subsequent to Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we had other subsequent scriptures coming up. Hatha Yoga scriptures called the Gheranda Samhita, Shiva Samhita. So they started elaborating a lot on the Hatha Yoga practices. What we have to keep in mind is that I've given a very long history on
Yes,
the
that's right.
development of traditional yoga.
Yeah, and there's
What?
like a evolution. I hear a lot of new terms coming up. In between, you spoke about tantra, and you spoke about agama, and then after you moved on to talk about hatha yoga as well, right? So it's like would you say it's an evolution, or is it just a diversification? That means it still exists, just that there were different types. How would you classify the transition then?
Yeah, okay. So despite the various traditions that started cropping up over the centuries, they all had one goal. And that
Mhm.
one goal was self realization.
Okay.
Okay. It was always the primary goal of these traditions was always self realizations. Where the differences occur is in the practices and slight differences in the philosophies.
Hmm.
So, um, when we talk about the tantras and the agamas, when they started, the primary goal was self-realization or moksha, And the other goal was also the development of siddhis or powers. So harnessing the body and its faculties to bring it to its highest potential. All for the main, to support the goal of self-realization. And then as the traditions started, so towards the later day, what actually started happening is there were focuses in the practices started changing. So while in the early days, we're talking about the Vedic days, classical yoga days, the focus was primarily on meditation as the main tool. Not only meditation, it's living a dharmic life, living a dharmic life, and there was a main important foundation, and then the various practices in the bodily, mental level rather, leading to the final practice of meditation to enter self-realization. That was in classical yoga. What happened during the tantric, agamic, or rather more of like, especially from the hatha yogic period, was there was never a lost in focus in dharma. The yogi had to always have that qualification of being a dharmic person. Okay, has to live a dharmic life, an ethical life. And from there, the practices, the various tools being employed to sit in meditation to help the yogi to reach a state of samadhi. Now that's where the practices started changing. The shift started happening towards pranayama and asanas. Okay, mainly from the hatha yoga stage. In hatha yoga pradipika, there are only about 15 asanas elaborated on, and half of the asanas are seated asanas. In the tantras and agamas, the asanas that were described were mainly seated asanas, and the purpose of the asanas was to bring the practitioner, the yogi. The asana is used as the base to sit in a deeper yogic practice of, be it pranayama or dharana or dhyana, concentration or meditation practices. So asana was seen as the firm seat for these subsequent practices. What happened subsequently was from Hatha Yoga Pradipika onwards, so maybe like let's say Gheranda Samhita onwards, later days scriptures which started coming up from 1700th century onwards. What happened was the asanas started getting more complicated. They from sitting asanas, they became standing asanas, inversions, and all that started happening.
Right. So that means before this period, am I right to say that the asanas and the pranayama, whatever techniques that were thought, were primarily to help a yogi to perform his meditation so as to reach self-realization? But this evolved, right? But when it evolved, would you agree that it has evolved a lot extensively? That it may even make one, especially the young ones, not even realize the purpose of yoga. And I hear a lot of stories. I mean, this is true real experience, that I hear a lot of even normal yoga instructors having a lot of injury because they just seem to be just blindly following things without having a proper understanding of doing yoga. And then the way you hear some commercial entities, they market it as like yoga is for everyone. So my question to you is yoga really for everyone, or is it only for those who are seeking self-realization? Or how do we make sense of the relevance of yoga in today's context then?
There were a couple of questions in your question.
Yeah, sorry. Let's take it one by one first.
Okay. Let me just start with the first point that you raised. The original, in the classical yoga, asanas were not the main component of the yoga. Okay, it was just one component. It was one component of 8 limbs of Patanjali yoga, or classical yoga as we call it. The 8 limbs, if I may elaborate, the yamas, niyamas, so basically their values and practices to to make sure that I'm starting to live in harmony with the universe and beings around me. So from the yamas and niyamas, asanas, and asana, there's only one verse in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Out of the, I think, about 196 verses, only one verse is dedicated to asana. And that verse is Sukham Sthiram Asanam. Basically, is sit in a posture that's comfortable and firm. For what? For meditation. Okay? So, and then, of course, the other limbs of classical yoga are pranayama. Pranayama is the breathing techniques to manipulate and harmonize the life force within us. And we have concentration, what we call, pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the sense organs so that the mind is just focused on turning inwards. We've got dharana, which is a concentration technique, dhyana, which is meditation or absorption, and the final state, which is samadhi. So from there, then it evolves, okay? In Hatha Yoga, Pradipika, it starts evolving. So we've got asanas as one component, pranayama. We're talking about mudras and bandhas. So gestures and locks we do with our body to keep the energy within the body and to raise the energy levels. And what we call nadhanusandhana. So it's raising energy levels to such a point, to a state where I can reach samadhi. So asanas, in the early stages, like I said, they were just a few asanas, and with the focus of keeping the body firm in meditation. The focus was on the meditation to reach samadhi. What happened was, now I'll go into what we call modern yoga.
Yes.
Okay? So around the time of, from what I've read, it started somewhere with this yoga teacher called Krishnamacharya. Okay, so around the early 20th century, we have modern yoga teachers like Krishnamacharya, who started putting a lot of emphasis on, before that, I have to backtrack a bit. While the Hatha Yoga tradition, asanas were seen as the means for meditation, they were also elaborated on. There was emphasis on them also to provide with the yogi, the practitioner, general wellness. Okay, so asanas were practiced. A certain sequence of asanas, sets of asanas were practiced for strength of the body and also lightness of the body. So from the Hatha Yogic tradition itself, I would say even before that, let's say from the Tantric Agamic tradition itself, asanas took a place of giving general wellness to the yogic practitioner. How can I sit in meditation and engage in deeper spiritual practices if my body is not in good shape, Yes. I mean, we all have felt that. We try sitting in meditation, our knees start aching, backache, this ache, that ache, and we can't sit in meditation. So with that in mind, with wellness in mind, asanas were practiced. Now, what happened was that with modern yoga, with Krishnamacharya and his students, B.K.S. Iyengar, Indra Devi, Patabi Joyce, his son T.K.V., Desika Kachar, the shift started moving more towards asanas, towards wellness. The spiritual element has been downplayed. What we have today is a massive downplaying of the spiritual element in yoga.
Right.
Okay, what started off as an approach, a methodology for achieving self-realization. I do not know how many teachers teach that to their students.
Correct. Okay. True.
The focus has become wellness, yoga therapy. It's become a commercial enterprise, and unfortunately, people are charging ridiculous amounts for knowledge that came to us free. The sages taught it. It came down the Guru Parampara, through the centuries, it came flowing to us free. The only requirement was dedicated pursuit, and now
it's being commercialized. Yeah.
All sorts of yoga is coming up, and and also the other main thing that has happened is the delinking of yoga from its Vedic roots. Yeah.
So how critical is, I mean, yes, you mentioned this delinking, and it's probably because to also cater to the non-Hindus, if I may use that word broadly, though, the connotation Hindu itself is a very Western coined term. But generally it's to cater to those who also subscribe to different other types of beliefs and stuff. Probably that's one reason why they decided to delink it. But as an individual, I'm not just saying this on behalf of Hindu Network, but as an individual, I always believe that you need faith. You need to have a shraddha in whatever you do, right? So when we practice yoga and stuff like that, I increasingly realize that it's like what I mentioned earlier, the main focus of self-realization, not just that, but also understanding your body. You need to understand, you need to trust that when you do certain postures, it's actually helping you to strengthen your muscles and your body muscles generally as a whole. So, but what's your take on how it has fine, it has evolved already, but moving on, as individuals want to embark on this yoga journey, and they may not know where to start at first. So, what would be your quick three-pointer advice for those who want to embark on such yoga therapy or yoga journey itself to enrich themselves before they even think about self-realizing, but just to generally pursue their general body wellness?
Okay, let me focus on the 3 points because I get a couple of issues here. Yoga is for everyone. Okay, while the traditional intention of yoga, the original intention of yoga, aim of yoga is self-realization. It developed over the centuries as not only for those who have moksha or self-realization as a goal, but who want to generally live a better life.
Mm.
So yoga is for everyone. It's not just for Hindus. And to live a better life, we need to be clear that it is still a spiritual pursuit. And because it's a spiritual pursuit, the underlying current that has to be there is first love for God, my devotion. So my 3 tips, let's come to my 3 tips then. For
Yes.
someone who wants to embark on this journey of yoga as for a better life, is first, cultivate. If you already do not have a relationship with God, please, we have to start with that.
Mm.
Do whatever prayers you are comfortable with. It doesn't have to be an elaborate prayer. Elaborate prayer is even better if you can do it. Whatever way you know how to connect with God, that has to be the first thing. Bhakti, as we call it. Bhakti must be there. We need to earn the Lord's grace. He has given us this knowledge to help us. So we need to tap into that grace through devotion. Okay. Second tip is we have to ask ourselves what we want for ourselves. Do we want a firmer, sexier body, a stronger body, a healthier body, or do we want something more? Do we want a stronger connection with God? So based on that, there are various schools around to offer that whatever our need is. They offer that, they provide that knowledge according to our need. And the third thing is, whatever the teacher gives, the knowledge is given, try to follow the practice that the teacher tells the student. And one yoga school may not give all that we want. We may have to go to several places to get the knowledge that we require. Maybe one school is very strong in asanas. We go to that school for asana. Another school might be very strong in pranayama techniques. We go to that school. Another school provides the Vedic knowledge. So we go to that teacher to learn what's Vedic knowledge. We should understand that Vedic knowledge is not about just about rituals. For those who are of another religion, no, Vedic knowledge is all about how do I learn to harmonize with myself and with the universe around me? How do I learn to live in peace with every being around me? It's basic core knowledge that we all are looking for it in one form or the other. You see so many teachers, new age teachers, talking about living at peace with ourselves and living out there. This knowledge came from the Vedas.
That's right. That's right.
So why not go back to our Vedas to get that knowledge? Yeah. So we have places like Hindu Center, okay, like a one-stop place where what we are trying to do with our Vedic yoga program is incorporating the good of the modern yoga schools. I mean, modern yoga has come up with very good knowledge on alignment that's needed for doing a asana properly, and great pranayama techniques and all that. So what we are doing is taking a bit of that modern school approach of asanas and pranayama and dhyana techniques, and what we are doing is that we are gunning for a spiritual transformation in the student. And how we are trying to push for that spiritual upliftment or transformation in that student is by providing opportunities for connection with God during the practice. Start off with prayers. When I do my Surya Namaskar, I chant the mantras to connect with Surya Deva, and also providing you Vedic knowledge, talking about the yamas and niyamas, the core values, that's needed on this path of devotion and spirituality. So this is what the Hindu Center is trying to do. And of course, within a 1.5 hour class, there's only so much the teacher can cover. So this is why we have other activities in the Hindu Center. If to up the devotion element in my life, there are prayer sessions that we hold, bhajan sessions, we celebrate festivals together. And then, of course, to deepen the knowledge of what the various philosophies in Hinduism are. If I want to learn more about dharma, I attend classes on that, Ramayana, Mahabharata classes. If I want to know more about Vedanta, how do I see that oneness with God, then we've got Vedanta classes. We have teachers coming in. So we try to give a very holistic development for that aspirant in the yogic pathway.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, it's amazing, very encouraging to hear that Hindu Center is actually putting up a lot of initiatives to actually broaden people's perspectives, and I think that's much needed, especially in today's world where everyone have great access to internet and there's so many random information out there, and it's so hard to decipher which is credible and which is fake or whatsoever. So I think it's a very great effort on the Hindu Center's front. I have another question. I mean, earlier we started off focusing a little bit more on meditation as an enabler for self-realization. Now, and today we constantly hear meditation. Oh, do meditation. You want to relax? Just do meditation. Just meditation. And then when you hear different YouTube videos describing focus on this area, focus on this object, or imagine a light. So I really don't know. Is that more of concentration or is it a meditation? What is really meditation?
It's a very good question, Karthik. When we use techniques like focusing on the breath, that's a very common meditation technique, or on an object of light, or even a symbol or a form of Ishvara or Bhagavan. Okay, so it starts off initial stages is what we call dharana or concentration. So the purpose of concentration is to train the mind to just focus on that one object, blocking out all unnecessary thoughts. And that is in itself is a very huge thing for the mind, because the mind is a monkey. It loves to jump around from topic to topic, So we need to start with so we need to start with concentration. We need to make the mind say, hey, come on, sit down in one place and start focusing on this one object. What happens from that concentration, what we call dharana, it's a seamless flow into what we call dhyana, on absorption, a state of absorption. As I start concentrating on that one object, whatever it may be, a symbol or mantra or an image, what happens is that the mind gets absorbed in that concentration. That state of absorption is called dhyana. That is what dhyana is.
Right. Okay. And at that kind of state, the other state, you basically were not even thinking anything. Is that how would you describe? How would you just have you experienced that state? Obviously, you should have, right? So I just want to know, how does it feel like?
Yeah, there is thinking. There's only one thought, right? Because the absorption is on the one object. But it comes to a point where it's not a willful. I'm not telling myself, okay, think on, like, for example, if I'm if I'm doing a breath focused meditation, I'm not saying, okay, inhale, exhale, exhale. No, that's not happening. It's already a natural absorption state. It's not really willful concentration there. The mind flows naturally into it. And what happens actually, because I'm so absorbed in that state, for a very deep practitioner, very experienced practitioner of dhyana, what actually happens is there's no more awareness of the body.
Okay.
There's no more, it's just, there's no more awareness of the external surroundings. That is why we have yogis people who can sit in meditation for hours. These are very experienced practitioners. They're not aware of the body, I even heard one story where a yogi, he was so deep in meditation, he was seated by a fire. This is in India. And he's a sadhu. And he was so absorbed in his meditation, he went into a state of samadhi where he totally lost consciousness of his body and mind and all that. And apparently his hand fell into the fire and it burned off his, this is an actual story.
Wow.
And it burned off his hand, and he didn't realize until hours later, his hand was burned off. That's how powerful dhyana is.
Wow. Okay. I wonder when I will reach that stage. Okay. And at this point in time, viewers, if you have any questions, please do drop your questions in the comment sections, and we definitely want to raise your questions as long as time permits. I have another question now, Malar. Earlier you mentioned about mudras, and earlier you also mentioned about pranayama as different elements of yoga. Now, the mudras itself, right? You do the mudras during your meditation exercise, or when do you, or is it like in silos you practice them, or how does it work?
Usually, the mudras and bandhas can come at any stage in asana itself. Usually, seated asanas, when doing pranayama and dhyana. The purpose of mudras and bandhas is to lock in the energy in the body and to start raising the pranic levels, so that raising of what we call the kundalini shakti, raising the energy levels in the body, such that the mind can reach higher levels of consciousness.
So, and where does the chanting part comes into play?
Chanting is usually taken as one form of meditation. So chanting can happen in conjunction with while practicing an asana, for example, like Surya Namaskar. So when we go into each pose of the Surya Namaskar, we chant a name of Lord Surya. And then the chanting is also taken as a tool in itself for dhyana. So, for example, this chanting Om, that from usually for the practitioner, the various stages, that's a scaffolding is done in a scaffolding manner. So it starts usually with verbal chanting, and then as the person gets more and more experience, naturally he goes into a mental chanting. It's just repeating the mantra mentally, and that chanting itself then brings the practitioner into higher states of consciousness.
Right. Okay. Okay. I mean, that's very good to know. And another question that I have. Sorry, I've just left lots of questions, and I hope to keep this really short. It's the part where you mentioned earlier on hatha yoga. Yeah, hatha yoga, right? So, and then, but I also hear this term called Ashtanga yoga. But I have not heard that term yet from you. So I was just wondering, where does that fit in?
Okay. Another good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
The way Ashtanga yoga is being used in our context, in the current phase of our lives now, is the Ashtanga yoga that was developed by this modern yoga teacher called Pattabi Joyce. And we've got very famous celebrities, Madonna and Gwyneth Paltrow and Russell Brand, practicing Ashtanga yoga. Their Ashtanga yoga is not the traditional Ashtanga yoga. What they are practicing is a practice of asanas and breath work, okay, and some concentration techniques. The actual original Ashtanga yoga occurs in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, in classical yoga itself. This is where the 8 limbs I mentioned earlier, sorry, I should have mentioned, it's actually Ashtanga yoga. The classical Ashtanga yoga is the 8 limbs of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi.
Right.
It's the holistic approach for self-realization.
Right, that's right. I think we have got a question here. Does the Yoga Sutras or Vedas speak about any particular meditation for layman person? This question is from Vignesh Jodimani.
There are some meditation techniques that is, I've not studied in detail the Yoga Sutras. There are some brief meditation verses. I do not know how much of the exact meditation techniques elaborated on in the scriptures. But we have to understand that what is the purpose of meditation? It does not matter what technique I'm using. We have to be clear what's the purpose of meditation. And the purpose of meditation is to calm the mind. Whatever my goal in life is, whether it is to lead a better life, just a dharmic life, I want a better, happier life, or if I want moksha, self-realization as a goal, whatever my goal in life is, I need a calm mind for that. A calm mind that can handle life's situations. So I need to just, instead of, many of us tend to get caught thinking in the whole excitement of dhyana and meditation, thinking, if I do this particular meditation, I'll gain siddhis or clairvoyance or certain special powers and, those kind of things. Maybe I'm opening up a can of worms here.
Yeah. I've got another question now.
So we have to understand that whatever technique I use, it should be with the purpose of learning to gain calmness, a one-pointed mind, so that I'm able to handle life's scenarios as they unfold.
Right. Now we have another question.
So-called simple. So something, even just a breath-focused meditation, a lot of Buddhist schools, they use this type of meditation. It seems, people say, it's so easy, why should I practice it? But what is seemingly easy is actually very difficult.
Yes.
It's a very powerful technique for single, what we call chitta ekagrata, or a pointed mind. Yeah.
Right. So we have another question now from Madam Chitra Varaprasad. So she has been told that yoga is an alignment of the body and mind and spirit. Can you explain? I think earlier you mentioned briefly about it. Maybe it might be useful to do a summary of it.
Yoga, the traditional, the original purpose of yoga is, like I said, is self-realization. For this self-realization is seeing myself not as this individual body, but the universal consciousness. Now, for that to happen, the mind needs to be in a very calm state. The Sage Patanjali describes yoga as yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. So basically, it's the stilling of the mind, the mind thoughts, the stilling of the mind, thoughts and emotions, turbulences of the mind. So when the mind is calm, only then can I see myself as my highest state of raw consciousness. Now, for that mind stilling to happen, I need to first harmonize my mind. When I say harmonizing my mind, I need to first learn to wield techniques to calm down the mind. Before I can even go to the mind level, I need to first deal with my body.
Correct. Agree.
So this is where I need to first engage in my asanas and pranayama practices. There is a mindfulness that happens when I focus on these asanas and pranayama practices. What actually happens is that I'm learning to become more aware of my body. The mind, that's the easiest way to get the mind to concentrate, focusing on the body. And then it goes to a subtle level of the mind. And then from there, I'm harmonizing myself with what we call spirit. That spirit's actually universal consciousness.
Right. There's earlier so far what you have mentioned, it's more of just spiritual upliftment, and it's a really big thing to pursue. And you also broadly mentioned about how asanas are used for general wellness. Now, what about critical illness? Is there anything in the Vedic yoga that has mentioned, in today's context, we increasingly hear a lot of people having strokes just like that, having blood pressure, and then that resulting in stroke, and then also cancer. That's also another increasing illness. Now, how is there anything in the Vedic yoga or any prescriptions to actually address such critical illnesses?
So in yoga knowledge, the cause of diseases, what in yoga it's called vyadi. The cause is usually starts with mental stress, what we call adi. So when the mind is in severe fluctuations or what we call stress, it comes to a point where it's over a prolonged period, it's not handled well, then disease develops. So in yoga, it's not just focusing on asanas. It has to be a very holistic approach. I do not know how much yoga therapy can cure critical or severe illness. There are some yoga universities like SVyasa in Bangalore that have been doing a lot of studies, scientific studies using modern approaches, and they have been yielding data, but I've not explored those. How much of yoga has been shown to manage diabetes well and high blood pressure. That's for sure.
Right.
Okay?
And that's
But
through asanas or meditation?
it's a holistic approach. So it has to be asanas, it has to be diet, it has to be mental practices, it has to be, of course, we need to tap in God's grace, also devotion. So it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just an asana approach. That would be wrong.
Right.
Not wrong, but rather that would be a limited feeling.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. That's right.
Not
That's right.
exploring the full potential of healing then.
So moving forward, earlier you mentioned about 3 pointers that one should, first of all, develop. I mean, I think you can also start summarizing already. First is to actually cultivate relationship with the divine, regardless of whatever religion you belong to. I think it's very important to cultivate a rapport with divine. And then the second pointer that you mentioned was to understand the body needs. Am I right to say that? You said
No. Actually, it's more of my personal needs. I have to have an honest conversation. I need to have an honest conversation myself and ask myself, what is it that I want? Am I just, do I want a stronger body? Or do I want to live a more dharmic life? Do I want to get closer to God? Or do I want self-realization? So based on whatever my needs are, my goals are in life, based on that, I take the yogic approach that's suitable for me.
All right, so that extends beyond your body needs, just your general needs. What do you really want? And then the third one is to obviously build a very good relationship with your instructor and follow the guidance and the practices in order to see the benefit. And then later on part, you also mentioned that everyone, before we even reach the self-realization stage, we first need to focus on the dharana, which is the stage where we actually practice trying to bring ourselves, like it's more of like a conditioning, right? Conditioning our mind so that we can slowly then experience the benefits of meditation. That's the other point that you brought up. Is there anything else you want to add on for that portion?
Yeah, if I can make a modification to that.
Yes, yes.
Not everyone has self-realization as a goal.
Yes. True.
Self-realization, it's only a real small minority of a population who have that as a sincere goal.
Correct.
Okay. So this word self-realization also has taken on a traction of its own in spirituality. Okay. I think what we focus on is more than forget self-realization. What we should focus on is first a dharmic life, dharmic living. That's the basics that the Vedas talk about. All of us have to aim for dharmic living.
And that's the part where you mentioned about the niyamas, yamas, and all the different things that you need to do in order to make sure that we are aligned with the dharmic path and we don't stray away from it. And then
Yes.
later on, you also, when I asked you about critical illnesses, you mentioned, in order to, I'm not sure whether to prevent completely, but to at least to minimize the level of VRD that you get, I think you should focus on your RD, which is calming your mind. And to calm the mind, you mentioned there are a lot of things. You take a holistic approach. That's asanas, diet, and then mental practices, and of course devotion. Is there anything else you want to add on for this portion?
RD is a state of where it's already mental stress.
Mm,
In yogic knowledge, mental stress, which is RD, leads
mm.
to Vyadi, which is illness.
Right.
So we
Okay.
have to combat stress first in a holistic
Yes.
manner.
Yep. Okay, that's so beautiful. I mean, you have actually really condensed a lot. I sense there's a lot of things out there, but you've really condensed it in such an easy way for all of us to consume it. Sorry, we have one more question. Would you mind taking it? Sorry, I know we've
We
exceeded
have
our
to.
time long ago. I'll just ask. This question is from Priya Panirselvam. She has asked. So she has attended a few yoga classes for health purposes, and they actually had a combination of yoga and meditation. When it comes to the meditation portion of lesson, she's not able to do it, and she faces a lot of challenges. Does that mean that I'm unable to connect with the divine, or is yoga and meditation is not for people like me? Oh no, that's quite a harsh comment there.
Okay. So Priya, first, it doesn't. We have to understand what prayer is. Okay, prayer is, as long as I have a thought of divine Bhagavan, that is already a prayer. That's already a connection I have with God. Everyone is entitled to having this connection. Okay. And for meditation, it's not easy. It is not easy for anyone to meditate. Okay. Even yogis, they struggle with meditation for many years. I mean, it's not easy when we're telling our usually the loud chatter in the mind to suddenly calm down and sit in meditation. No, it's not easy. So that needs to be slowly built up. Okay, so this is where we start with your asanas. When you're doing your asanas, one way you can start building up the focus of your mind is by concentrating fully on the asana while the practice is happening. Just focus on the asana, block out any other thoughts in your mind. Just listen to the teacher's instructions, and let's just focus on the body, the alignment, the sensations in the body. That in itself already is a concentration technique. Okay, then slowly move on, start doing some japa, just start chanting the name of the Lord, maybe Om Namah Shivaya, Om Ramaya Namaha, Om Namo Narayanaya. There's so many ways to just chant the name of the Lord. Ask for God's grace. It's very important to ask for God's grace in all these practices. And then slowly build up, do scaffolding. So from asanas, go into concentration, dharana techniques, simple dharana, japa. Then from there, you slowly move on to mental techniques. From what is verbal chanting of Om Namah Shivaya, slowly you move on to mental chanting. This is how meditation is slowly built up over a lifetime. So there's no need to beat ourselves up. A lot of teachers, they mistakenly say, I've even sat in meditation classes where the teacher actually says, block out all thoughts in your mind. That is ridiculous.
Yes, it is really, really hard. Yeah.
The function of the mind is to entertain thoughts. How can you say block out all thoughts? It's more of like, let the thoughts come, but do not dwell, do not give power to those thoughts. Let them come and then go. That's the whole point of meditation. The thoughts are to arise, and then we learn how to deal with those thoughts.
Right. Thank you so much. Well said. Now we have another question, again from Vignesh Jodimani. He has asked, there's lots of different school of thought regarding yoga. If a person wants to begin yoga, what's your advice and where to begin to find the right teacher? I think you mentioned briefly earlier. Yeah. So where can he begin to actually find the right teacher that would be able to cater to his needs? His pursuits,
Please
if I
come
may.
to the center.
Okay, so Hindu Center would be a good place to start off. Yes.
Yeah, because you see, why I'm mentioning the Hindu center is there are various tools that are employed in the journey of yoga. Okay, so Hindu Center is able to provide those tools. You come for a yoga class, Vedic yoga class, you're given an introduction to asanas, pranayama, concentration and meditation techniques. And then you're given an introduction to the Vedic knowledge, prayers. From there, then there are various activities that we hold where you will know for yourself what you want more of. And for example, maybe after learning with us, then you realize, I want to deepen my practice of asanas. Then you can find a school in India or anywhere in the world that is renowned for asana practices. Or maybe you might go, okay, this particular school is known for their dhyana techniques. So Hindu Center is a good place to start with. There are not just Hindu Center, there are other places also. I've heard of classes in temples and all that. So you just have to do a bit of investigation on your own and see what it is, what program they're offering. And just make sure that it always incorporates a spirituality element. The devotional element must be there to start your journey in traditional yoga.
Once again, a very well packaged answer. I think you addressed a lot of things there. So one final question to you, and with that we can probably do your closing prayer as well. Is sorry, we have one more question. Renuka Kundadaraman has asked, do you have classes for children 5 years old or 5-year-old kids? Does Hindu Center offers programs for children?
Yes, we do. And its program is called Bala Gurukulam. So it means a school for children. So we have classes. Of course, now during the COVID period, it's I'm not sure if they're taking online classes, but we do not have whole set. Once the circuit breaker lifts off, Bala Gurukulam classes will start, where we introduce the child to very simple, basic knowledge about Hinduism. We teach the child what the various forms of God, through interesting stories and play. There's a lot of play element in our classes. We teach the child to cultivate a loving relationship with God, seed that spirituality in the child. And then for the older kids, so the classes are from, if I'm not mistaken, 6 years old to 16 years old. But of course, you can contact the Hindu Center to check the exact age of enrollment. And then, of course, for the older children, then there's deeper knowledge that's taught to them. The children are also introduced to puja, how to do worship of Bhagavan. They taught how to chant in Sanskrit. So it's a holistic spiritual development that's offered to the child.
Right. One last question. In fact, I do not know what that's going to extend it, but I just want to do a quick clarification. In Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of the term yoga is being used very loosely or very commonly, not loosely, very commonly in Bhagavad Gita. Now, does that have any relation in Vedic yoga to yoga? Vedic yoga? Is there any relation with your Vedic yoga?
The word yoga has got several meanings depending on the context. In the Bhagavad Gita, yoga is described as samatvam yoga uchyate, where it's a state of mind where the mind is not disturbed, no matter what it is, a situation that's unfolding. So what we call equanimity of the mind, samatvam. Okay, it's also used in the context of how I engage in actions. So in the verse, the words yoga karmasu kaushalam. So this is where it means that I do my duties, I engage in actions which are aligned with dharma, and it's also the attitude with which I engage in that dutiful action. I dedicate the action unto the Lord. I give my very best, and I dedicate that action saying that, Bhagavan, I'm doing this for you. So that's yoga karma kaushalam. Yoga can also be described as a chapter.
Wow.
Okay? So there's various definitions of yoga in our scriptures, and also yoga is also used in the context of this self-realization in the Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make the clarification because I had a question. Someone asked me via WhatsApp. So I wanted to quickly ask you that question as well. Thank you so much, Malar. I think you really spent your precious time with us, and I think you have also addressed a lot of people's questions. They may not have asked, but I think through some of the questions that I've asked, and you also added a lot of useful and provided a lot of valuable information that kind of definitely broadened our perspectives, or at least it broadened my perspective. And I'm so thankful for this opportunity. And thank you so much once again to Hindu Center for recommending you. I think it's such a beautiful session and enriching session, importantly. Now, shall we do our closing prayer then?
Yeah, so before I go to the closing prayer, Karthik, thank you so much for giving me this beautiful opportunity to share more about our spiritual tradition, our Vedic tradition. I think what Hindu Youth Network is doing, it's a massive, impactful initiative to bring the beauty of our tradition to Singaporeans, not just the young, but everyone. So thank you so much for doing this and for giving me the opportunity. I've had a great time. And so, I'll be happy to take on any further questions. I'm not sure how you want to do this.
I mean, if the audience have further questions, they can always directly convey the questions to Hindu Center, or you can also directly go to the classes and meet Miss Malar when the COVID situation ends, and hopefully that ends really soon. All right, so the closing prayer that we're going to do, would you mind just sharing the significance of this closing prayer?
It's a prayer. There are two sets of prayers, but basically it's for general well-being. We're praying for the well-being of every living being in this universe. We are asking for good health. We're asking for the eradication of sorrow. And we're basically saying, may no sorrow come to any being in this universe. And the times that we are in right now, I think it's all the more very applicable.
All right, so let's do the closing prayer.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु, सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us. See you next week.